In Dungeons & Dragons, if you're a wizard and you're not casting Fireball, what are you even doing? We've all been taught that a caster's whole identity is to cast spells, round after round. Magic is supposed to be happening. But is that a universal role for all role-playing games? Or is that just a D&D thing? What if I told you that in other games, playing your caster that way doesn't just make you less effective, it can make you a serious liability. Today, we're going to look at how 3 very different RPGs and a popular variant answer that one question. In doing so, we'll uncover the core design philosophies that can turn one system's hero into another's ticking time bomb. We'll be comparing the Titan, D&D 5th edition, the gritty upstart Shadowdark, and the cinematic powerhouse Savage Worlds. For players, this is about adjusting your instincts, because the habits that make you a great 5e wizard might just get your party killed in Shadowdark. Let's start with the baseline that has defined spellcasting for a whole generation of players. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is the undisputed king of tabletop role-playing games, and its approach to magic is a huge part of its massive appeal. In 5th edition, casters are specialists. They are powerful engines of damage, control, or support, and the game is balanced around the expectation that they'll be performing their magical functions every single round. This is what I'm going to call the mandate of reliability. The main resource for a 5e caster is the spell slot. You've got a limited number of these, and they let you cast your most powerful, game-changing spells. The core tactical choice is deciding whether to burn a 3rd level slot for a fireball now, or save it for a potentially scarier fight later. These slots are precious, and using them is impactful. But that scarcity doesn't mean a caster ever stops casting. The reason for this comes down to one system-defining mechanic: the cantrip. Cantrips are 0-level spells that cost nothing. You can use them at will, as many times as you want, forever. They're the ultimate fallback. More importantly, damage-dealing cantrips scale up as you level, making sure they stay a decent option from level 1 all the way to level 20. A wizard never has to ask, what do I do this round? The answer is always to cast something. The game's math backs this up. A wizard picking up a crossbow is almost always making a bad choice. Their weapon proficiency isn't great, and its damage doesn't scale the way their free infinite magic does. 5e caster is a fountain of magical energy, a reliable contributor whose job is to do magic all the time. The fantasy here is one of mastery and dependable power. You are a specialist, and your specialty is always on. Now let's take that entire idea of reliability and throw it out the window. Welcome to Shadowdark, a game where magic is powerful, terrifying, and fundamentally untrustworthy. If 5e runs the mandate of reliability, Shadowdark is built on the mandate of risk. Casters in Shadowdark don't use spell slots. Instead, the game uses a roll-to-cast system. You know a handful of spells, and you can try to cast any of them as often as you want. To do it, you make a spellcasting check against a difficulty set by the spell's tier. If you succeed, the spell works, and critically, you still know it. You can try casting it again later. But what happens if you fail? Well, if you fail the roll, the spell doesn't work, and it's gone from your memory until you get a full night's rest. Your most powerful tool might just vanish on your first try of the day. And that's not even the worst of it. If you roll a natural 1 on that check, you trigger a magical mishap. The spell might explode in your face, a chaotic portal might rip open, or your own body could twist into some new, horrifying shape. This design completely changes the caster's job. You're no longer managing resources, you're managing risk. The question isn't which spell is the best, but is this situation so bad that's worth the risk of losing the spell for the day, or worse? Suddenly, casting a spell is a dramatic, high-stakes decision, not just the default action. In a minor fight against a few goblins, a Shadowdark wizard is far more likely to pull a dagger or sling a rock than risk losing magic missile before they even get to the real dangers of the dungeon. Their fallback plan isn't a weaker spell. It's basic, mundane survival. Magic is saved for when it truly matters, when the tide of battle has to turn, and a spell is the only thing that can save the party. In Shadowdark, the answer to should casters always cast is a strategic and often terrified absolutely not. Every spell is a cinematic climax, not a routine action. So we've seen the reliable specialist and the desperate gambler. Our third game, Savage Worlds, offers another philosophy entirely: the mandate of diversification. In Savage Worlds, being just a caster is rarely your entire character. You're a competent hero who also just happens to wield awesome powers. Savage Worlds is a generic, pulpy, action-first system, and its magic reflects that. Casters run on a PowerPoint economy, a simple, familiar mana-type system. You have a pool of points, and every power costs a few of them to activate. Once that pool is empty, you're done casting. There are no free, at-will cantrips to fall back on. Every magical effect has a cost. So what happens when the well runs dry? You're expected to do something else. Because the game has no rigid classes, your character is probably built with other skills. When you're out of power points, you don't become useless. You draw your pistol and start shooting. You grab your sword and get in the fight. You use your taunt skill to make the enemy vulnerable, or your intimidation skill to scare them. You are an action hero first and a magic user second. The game does have a last-ditch option called shorting, where you can try to cast a power with 0 power points left. But this comes with a huge penalty to the roll, and you risk becoming fatigued, a nasty status effect that penalizes almost everything you do. It's a desperation move, not a fallback, which just reinforces the idea that you should have other non-magical skills to rely on. Your character isn't just a mage. You might be a wise-cracking private eye who also throws psychic energy bolts, or a grizzled soldier with a knack for holy miracles. Magic is part of the package, not the whole identity. Because of this, the system actively discourages you from putting all your points into just casting. To be effective in Savage Worlds, you have to be flexible. But what if we took Savage Worlds and twisted its philosophy with one simple change? There is a popular rule called no power points that completely alters the caster's role, creating our fourth model, the mandate of difficulty. As the name implies, power points are gone. Instead of managing a resource pool, you manage the immediate difficulty of casting the spell. To activate any power, you make your arcane skill roll, but with a negative penalty equal to half the power's total power point cost rounded up. If you fail, the power does not go off and you become shaken, a Savage World status condition that represents being jostled. There's no inherent penalty to your magic for just failing the roll. The cost is simply the reduced chance of success. This has a fascinating impact on gameplay. Low-cost powers like a basic bolt that costs 2 power points now only give you a -1 penalty. This turns them into a soft cantrip, something you can attempt every single round with a high chance of success. It's always available, even if it's not a guaranteed hit. However, those huge, game-changing powers become incredibly risky. A power that costs 10 points suddenly comes with a massive -5 penalty to your roll. This gates powerful magic behind a wall of pure difficulty. Casters are now constantly forced to choose between low impact, reliable casting, or high impact, risky casting. This model also encourages the frequent use of low-cost utility spells that players might otherwise hoard their points for. So let's put it all together. We have 4 different approaches from these 3 games, all coming from their core design ideas. In D&D 5e, it's the mandate of reliability. The game is balanced for casters to use magic every round. With scaling at-will cantrips, casting isn't just an option, it's the best option almost always. So yes, you should always be casting. In Shadowdark, it's the mandate of risk. Magic doesn't have a fixed resource cost, but a cost of failure and potential disaster. You cast very selectively, saving your power for critical moments because a bad roll is so punishing. So should you always cast? Absolutely not. In Savage Worlds, it's the mandate of diversification. Your power points are finite, and with no freebies, your magic is limited. The system expects you to have a plan B. You're a competent adventurer first, and your powers are just one of the tools you use. You cast when it makes sense and do something else when it doesn't. Finally, the Savage Worlds no PowerPoint variant, it's the mandate of difficulty. Magic is always available, but it comes at the cost of a penalty to your roll. This creates a hybrid model where you can always try to cast, but you're constantly weighing the high reliability of weak spells against the low reliability of powerful ones. What this all shows us is that the role of a spellcaster is a direct reflection of a game's fantasy. D&D 5e sells the fantasy of being a master of the arcane, a specialist whose power is constant and defining. Shadowdark delivers the fantasy of wild, dangerous magic, where just using it is an act of bravery. Savage Worlds champions the fantasy of the multi-talented action hero, capable in any situation, where magic is a supplement to your skills. And the no PowerPoint variant creates a fantasy of managing magical output, of choosing between a steady trickle of magic and a risky, powerful torrent. Of course, these are only a few ways casters should operate. Understanding this design is the key to enjoying each game on its own terms and appreciating just how broad the idea of a caster can really be. It shows us that the rules we learn in one game are often just one creator's vision, not universal laws of role-playing. So now I want to turn the question over to you. We've only scratched the surface here. I want to hear about your favorite spellcasting system from any tabletop role-playing game. Tell me about it in the comments below. What game is it from? How does its magic system affect the way you play? And what makes it so much fun for you? If you enjoyed this deep dive into tabletop role-playing game design, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. If you want to learn more about Savage Worlds combat, you can take a look at this video right here. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay savage.